The sun blazed overhead as people lounged by the community pool, laughing and splashing in the water. Kids raced each other from one end to the other while parents relaxed under umbrellas. The air smelled like sunscreen and chlorine, a perfect summer afternoon. Near the deep end, a man in his late 40s sat on the edge, his legs dangling in the water. He had a sharp tongue and a habit of making rude comments under his breath. That day, his eyes locked onto a woman in a swimsuit, calmly floating on her back. She was minding her own business, enjoying the cool water against her skin. The man smirked, nudging the guy next to him. "Some people don't know their place," he muttered, just loud enough for others to hear. A few heads turned, but most ignored him. The woman, however, paused mid-float. She lowered her feet, standing waist-deep in the water, and glanced in his direction. She didn't say anything. Just studied him for a moment before swimming toward the ladder. The man chuckled, thinking he'd gotten under her skin. He didn't notice the way a few people nearby exchanged uneasy looks. As the woman stepped out of the pool, water dripping from her clothes, she reached for her towel, and the radio clipped to her bag. She pressed a button and spoke calmly into it. Unit 7, status check at the community pool. Possible disturbance. The man's smirk faded. His eyes flicked from the radio to her face, then to the small badge barely visible on her bag. His stomach dropped. Because the woman he'd just insulted wasn't just anyone. She was the police chief. The man's face went pale as the woman, no, the police chief, dried her hands and turned to face him fully. Her expression wasn't angry. It was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that made his skin prickle. A few people nearby had stopped talking. A teenager froze mid-dive, hanging onto the edge of the pool to watch. Even the lifeguard shifted in their seat, eyes darting between the two. The man swallowed hard. His mouth, which had been so quick with insults earlier, suddenly felt dry. He opened it, then closed it again. No clever comeback came. The police chief tilted her head slightly. "Problem?" she asked, her voice even. The man's throat tightened. He forced a laugh, but it came out shaky. "Nah, no problem. Just talking." She held his gaze for a second longer than necessary, then nodded slowly. "Good." That single word should have been a relief. But the way she said it, like it wasn't over, made his shoulders tense. A low murmur spread through the crowd. A woman in sunglasses whispered to her friend, "Did you hear what he said?" A guy near the snack bar shook his head, muttering, "Idiot." The man's ears burned. He wanted to disappear. Then, a new sound cut through the tension, a police radio crackling to life. A voice came through, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Chief, backup's 2 minutes out. Need us to step in?" Backup? For this? The man's stomach twisted. He hadn't done anything, just said something stupid. But the way people were looking at him, the way the chief's eyes never left his face, he suddenly realized how serious this could get. The chief lifted the radio. "Stand by." Then, to the man, her voice low, "Let's talk." The man's legs felt unsteady as he followed the police chief to a quieter spot near the pool gate. His mind raced. What was she going to do? Write him a ticket? Arrest him? The way people were staring made his skin crawl. He could already hear the whispers, "That's the guy who mouthed off to the chief." She stopped under the shade of a palm tree and crossed her arms. Not aggressive, but firm. "You got a name?" she asked. He hesitated. Giving his name felt like signing a confession. But lying to a cop, especially this cop, was a worse idea. "Yeah," he muttered. She waited. He exhaled sharply. "It's Tony." Stupid, why did I say that? Now she could look him up. Now this would follow him. The chief nodded. "Tony. You know why we're talking? His jaw clenched. He wanted to say no, enlighten me with the same sneer he'd used earlier, but the words died in his throat. Instead, he shrugged. She studied him. That comment you made back there. You think that was okay? A hot flush crept up his neck. I didn't mean anything by it. The lie tasted bitter. A flicker of disappointment crossed her face. See, that's the problem. People say garbage, then act shocked when there's consequences. She paused. You got kids, Tony? The question threw him. What? Kids? Do you have any? He shifted on his feet. Yeah. A son. Would you let someone talk to him like that? Tony's stomach dropped. His boy was 9, small, shy, the kind of kid who cried when classmates left him out of games. The thought of some loudmouth tearing him down just for existing made his fists tighten. But he couldn't say that. Couldn't admit it. The chief saw the conflict in his face. Yeah, she said quietly. Didn't think so. A siren wailed in the distance, not close, but enough to make Tony's pulse spike. Was that for him? The chief glanced toward the sound, then back at him. Here's what's gonna happen. You're gonna apologize. Not to me, to them. She nodded toward the pool, where people were still watching. Then you're gonna leave. And next time you open your mouth, you'll remember today. Tony's pride screamed. Apologize in front of everyone? That was worse than a fine. But the alternative, cuffs, a record, his son finding out, was unthinkable. He swallowed hard. Fine. Tony's feet dragged as he walked back toward the pool, the chief a step behind him. Every eye locked onto him, the murmurs, the raised eyebrows, the phone cameras subtly tilting his way. His throat tightened. This was worse than he imagined. He stopped at the edge of the pool deck, hands shoved in his pockets. The words stuck in his chest like wet cement. Just say it and get out, he told himself. But his pride was a stubborn thing, clinging to him even now. The chief didn't push. She just waited, arms crossed. Tony cleared his throat. His voice came out weak. A few kids still splashing in the water paused, staring. A woman with braids folded her arms, unimpressed. Screw it. He forced the words out. I was out of line earlier. Shouldn't have said what I said. He glanced at the chief, then away. Sorry. Silence. Then, from somewhere in the crowd, that's it? Tony's head snapped up. A younger guy in swim trunks shook his head. Man, you talked all that mess and now you mumble half an apology? Nah. A ripple of agreement spread. An older man near the lounge chairs chimed in, you don't even know why you're sorry. Tony's face burned. He shot a look at the chief, but her expression was unreadable. This wasn't part of the deal, was she gonna let them gang up on him? Then, a new voice cut through. Let him finish. It was the lifeguard, a sunburnt guy in his 20s. He shrugged when everyone turned. Dude's trying. Maybe let him actually try before y'all roast him. The crowd hesitated. Tony exhaled, shoulders slumping. For the first time, the anger in the air felt less like an attack and more like a lesson. The chief finally spoke. Tony. Just his name, no push. But it was enough. He rubbed the back of his neck. I was disrespectful, he admitted, louder this time. And I'm sorry, for real. Not just 'cause I got caught. He glanced at the woman he'd insulted. You didn't deserve that. A beat passed. Then the woman with braids nodded once. All right. Not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. The chief stepped forward. We done here? She asked the crowd. A few murmurs, but no objections. The moment stretched, then snapped. Conversation started back up. A kid cannonballed into the pool. The world moved on. Tony stood there, dizzy with relief. It was over. But as he turned to leave, the chief caught his arm. One more thing. She handed him a card, community service info. You wanna make it right? Put in some hours. Up to you. Then she walked away, leaving him holding the card, and a choice. The community center's basketball court buzzed with noise, squeaking sneakers, laughing kids, the rhythmic thump of a ball against pavement. Tony wiped sweat from his forehead with the back of his arm and adjusted the volunteer badge clipped to his shirt. Mr. Tony, watch this. A lanky kid dribbled awkwardly between his legs before launching a shot that missed the backboard entirely. Close, man, Tony said, tossing the ball back. Try keeping your elbows in next time. The kid beamed like he'd been given a secret playbook. It was Tony's third weekend of community service, 10 more to go. At first, he'd shown up just to check a box. Get the chief off his back. But somewhere between handing out water bottles at a youth league game and helping a tiny girl untangle her jump rope, something unexpected happened. He started noticing things. Like how the mom who ran the snack bar always packed an extra sandwich for the kid whose dad never stuck around. How the teenagers who seemed tough at first glance lit up when someone asked about their lives. How the chief sometimes stopped by, not to check on him, but to play pickup games with the older kids. Today, she was here. Tony spotted her near the bleachers, tying her hair back before joining a game. She moved effortlessly, quick passes, no trash talk, just pure focus. The kids loved it. Chief's nice, the lanky boy had told Tony earlier, like it was a revelation. She high-fived me when I made a free throw last week. Tony had nodded, throat tight. He'd spent years assuming people in authority were either useless or out to get him. But here was the woman he'd disrespected, spending her Saturday making sure kids felt seen. A whistle blew. Game over. The chief jogged to the sidelines, grabbing a water bottle. Her eyes met Tony's across the court. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away either. Just gave a short nod before a teenager pulled her into a debate about foul calls. Tony exhaled. Maybe change wasn't some big dramatic moment. Maybe it was just showing up. Later that night. The bar was loud, same as always. Tony's old crew waved him over to their usual table. Where you been, man? His buddy clapped him on the back. We thought you joined a cult or some, wait, why you wearing khakis? Tony glanced down at his clean pants, he'd come straight from the center. Been busy, he muttered. Doing what? He could have lied. Made up a side hustle or a family thing. But for some reason, he said, community service. At the rec center. The table erupted. Ha! What did you do, get arrested? Nah, just, had to put in some hours. For what? Tony hesitated. The pool incident felt like a lifetime ago. Said some dumb stuff. To a cop. His friend nearly spit out his beer. You mouthed off to a cop and lived? Damn, what did she do, tase you? Nah. She gave me a choice. The guys waited, expecting a punchline. When none came, the mood shifted. So what, you like, mentoring kids now? One of them fake shuddered. Man, I'd rather get tossed. Laughter. Tony forced a chuckle, but it rang hollow. He stayed for one drink, then made an excuse. As he left, he heard his friend call after him, hey, you gonna be weird now? Tony didn't turn around. Rain pounded the community center's roof as Tony helped stack chairs after a canceled basketball clinic. The lanky kid, Marcus, he'd finally learned his name, darted around him, helping, by dragging chairs twice his size. Yo, Mr. Tony, Marcus said, you ever seen the chief mad for real? Tony paused. Why? My brother said she chased some dude through a busted fence last month. Like, full sprint. Marcus mimed firing a gun. Pow! She didn't shoot him, idiot, another kid called from across the gym. The debate dissolved into exaggerated cop impressions until thunder rattled the windows. The power flickered. That's when the shouting started. A soaked teenager burst through the doors, wild-eyed. Somebody call the chief, Jamal's stuck in the creek. The room froze. Tony knew Jamal, quiet 13-year-old who always hung back but never missed a game. The teen gasped out the story, flash flood warning ignored, dare gone wrong, Jamal clinging to a tree branch as water rose. We called 911 but the chief wasn't here. Neither were other staff. Just Tony, 2 volunteers, and a gym full of kids. Marcus tugged Tony's sleeve. You gotta help. Tony's stomach dropped. I'm not, that's not. But the kids were already grabbing life vests from the swim program closet. The teen pointed out the window toward the woods. It's right past the tree line. The creek was a roaring beast, brown water swallowing roots and rocks. 20 yards out, Jamal hugged a bent birch, knees drawn up as waves licked his shoes. Hold on. Tony screamed over the noise. Useless. A kid thrust a coiled rope at him. Tie it to that post. Tony's hands shook. He wasn't a hero. He fixed AC units for a living. But the post was solid concrete. Splash. Marcus had waded in up to his thighs, arms outstretched toward Jamal. Get back. Tony lunged, rope forgotten. Icy water swallowed his legs. He grabbed Marcus' collar just as the current nearly took them both. Someone shouted. A flashlight cut through the rain. Then, a whistle blast. The chief vaulted over the creek bank, radio crackling. 2 officers followed, hauling a bright orange stretcher. Tony. Get them out, she barked. He dragged Marcus backward as the cops launched the stretcher like a raft toward Jamal. The chief waded in, shouting coordinates to dispatch. For a heart-stopping second, the stretcher caught on debris, then the chief was in the water, swimming. Jamal let go. Back at the center, paramedics checked Jamal's vitals, fine, just scared. Parents arrived, yelling then crying. The chief stood dripping in the doorway, giving statements. Marcus, wrapped in a foil blanket, whispered to Tony, "You saved me." Tony's laugh came out ragged. "You idiot. You jumped in." "Yeah," Marcus grinned. "But you jumped after." Across the room, the chief met Tony's gaze. No nod this time. Just an unreadable look as she wrung water from her sleeves. The fluorescent lights of the community center hummed overhead as the last paramedic packed up their gear. Jamal had been taken home by his relieved but furious mother, Marcus was picked up by an aunt who smothered him in hugs, and the other kids had slowly trickled out, though not without shooting Tony looks ranging from awe to, "I can't believe you actually did that." Now, it was just Tony, the chief, and the squeak of a janitor's mop down the hall. Tony sat on the bleachers, soaked shoes squishing with every shift of his weight. He should go home. Change. Sleep for a week. But something kept him there. The chief leaned against the wall near the door, arms crossed. She hadn't spoken to him since the creek. Just traded clipped words with her officers and nodded at the EMTs. Now, though, she pushed off the wall and walked over. "You okay?" The question caught him off guard. Not, "What were you thinking?" or, "You could have made things worse." Just, "You okay?" Tony let out a slow breath. "Yeah. Just, cold." She almost smiled at that. "Yeah. Me too." A pause. The rain still tapped against the windows. Tony rubbed his hands together, staring at the floor. Kid would have been fine without me. You guys had it handled. The chief shook her head. Maybe. But you didn't know that when you went in. She tilted her head slightly. Why'd you do it? Tony opened his mouth, then closed it. The truth was, he hadn't decided to do anything. 1 second, he was watching Marcus stumble into the water, and the next, he was waist-deep, heart-hammering. Didn't really think about it, he admitted. The chief studied him for a long moment. Then, quietly, that's how you know it was real. Tony looked up. She held his gaze. Back at the pool, you had to think about apologizing. Had to force it. Out there today? You just moved. Something in her tone made his throat tighten. He hadn't been a hero. He'd been scared, clumsy, useless until the cops showed up. But the way she said it, like she saw something in him he hadn't even known was there. The janitor's mop squeaked closer. The chief straightened up, back to business. Your community service hours are done, by the way, she said. After today, consider it squared. Tony blinked. Wait, I still had weeks left. You earned it. She turned toward the door, then paused. But if you ever want to come back, we could use you. Then she was gone, leaving Tony sitting there, dripping on the bleachers, wondering when exactly his life had flipped upside down.